All right, awesome. Well, thank you everybody for joining today's SDEC session and happy holidays as well. My name is Julia and I'm from Search Discovery and I'll be moderating today's session behind the scenes. So for those of you that are new to the SDEC, we're a free educational community that offers sessions just like this in areas such as digital marketing, analytics, and more. So today's session will be in the area of digital strategy with Ted Sfikas about first-party data strategy for the cookieless world. So if you're on this call or watching this recording and you're not already a member of the SDEC, it is free to join. So I'll be pasting a link where you can join in the chat here shortly. So there's also a Slack group that will allow you to interact with one another as well as check out the past recordings. So you'll be more than welcome to join there within that link as well. So during this session, if you have any technical difficulties or need help regarding the SDEC, I'll be looking within the Zoom chat for any questions that come through for me. And then if you have any questions today for our speaker, Ted, please put those in the Zoom Q&A and we will address those at the end. So thank you so much, Ted, for joining us and presenting today. So I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Julia. Hi, everybody, and it's a pleasure to be here. I work with Telium, which is a customer data platform company, and we've been spending the last few years talking about first-party data and first-party strategies that our customers and prospects can align with. And I'm really happy to be here today and share the information that I've gathered over the last few years with you. So let's get started without further ado. Our agenda today is to, first of all, take a look at the changing identity landscape. Identity is a big part of first-party data strategies, as I'm sure many of you have already realized. We'll also take a look at the impact to the business that these changes are having. It bears repeating and emphasizing how that is changing the way that we do business, not only in marketing, but also in IT, also in ad tech, and with new machine learning techniques. And then we'll look at some of the strategies that myself and many of my colleagues have suggested for moving forward, new solutions and strategies to deal with the changes that are happening, forcing us to move to a first-party approach. And then we'll take some Q&A. All right, so what's happening right now as we speak? In fact, this is kind of an old slide because it's been happening for many, many years. Change is the norm. You've seen it all over the place. You know, when I first started with Telium way back in 2015, nobody knew what a CDP was. And then I guess it was May 25th, 2018, the phone started ringing off the hook because of GDPR. And it wasn't only GDPR, CCPA shortly followed. All the privacy regulations started emphasizing a consumer-centric approach to data collection. Apple came by, and everybody knows about this. The IDFA went away. You have to actually give permission or else Apple will obfuscate it. They introduced intelligent tracking prevention on their phones, ITP, to make sure that, you know, third-party businesses couldn't be tracking people as they went from app to app. So all of these things started hitting us, privacy regulations, browser restrictions, new value exchange banners that some businesses didn't really take seriously. You see the screenshot here. That's not very appealing. a little box that says allow me to track you or not. Well, 4% of people said okay. The other 96% said no. I don't blame them. This is not very appealing to people. So the value exchange of, you know, why we are collecting the data really surfaced to the forefront. And with all these other things that you see popping up on the screen now, Safari has shut down third-party cookies. They call it the cookie apocalypse. Google Chrome is going to be following that very shortly in about a year. So we've got about, what I like to say, 2 IT projects left before third-party cookies go away. And that's a big, big change because Ad tech and marketing are built on third-party cookies and the ability to read data, even though consumers are not on your website, your owned and operated properties. So net, we're building a more private web. It's happening. Many of my customers are aware of this. I see it in the Fortune 500 at the moment, but it's all over. Even the mom and pop shops understand that, you know, their tags and their cookies and their beacons and their pixels, they're not going to be working as they expect in no short order once Google Chrome joins the fray here. So transitioning is a must. As a summary, regulatory compliance, the third-party cookies going away, the new browser changes and ad blocking, IDFA loss, the ITP, Google's same site cookies, all of these are reducing data fidelity. It's now moving into a place where, once again, as most of us expected, the walled gardens like publishers and social media sites, they're the ones that businesses are turning to. And so if we don't start thinking about how we're moving our data to places like Facebook and Snapchat and New York Times and so forth, all these major publishers, they're the ones that are collecting first-party data, and they're the ones that are going to be able to segment and develop cohorts for us to advertise to. It's not going to be as easy as it was before, going through thousands of different websites and having that choice. So we're conflating in the industry, and transitioning is a must. How is it impacting the business? And you can see from here, this Nielsen report, you know, in 2020, we see the smartphone and the web apps 18 years and older, most of the time they're spending it on those apps. We see tablets, stream TV, all of these devices really started coming to the forefront, especially with the pandemic, when IoT devices became the norm. So signal availability is all in that blue area that you see on the screen here. It was pretty good in 2020, but after Safari and soon to be Google Chrome started locking things down and privacy really became the expectation, you start seeing in 2021 signal loss. What is signal loss? It means that we can no longer receive the signals from people that go on websites. So if I go onto you know, LinkedIn and I click on an ad and I arrive on your site, that's great. But that third-party cookie that came with me is no longer able to be read. So you have to have a way to track me and attribute where I came from using your own technology, your business's technology. We call that first-party technology because that's technology that you own. And this slide makes it really clear why it's really necessary to further invest in those things. I've talked to a lot of people, and I hear three things. And some of you may be laughing when you look at this. You're like, you can't give up. You actually can. I've talked to many prospects who don't want to deal with this. They want to say, you know what, we've lost maybe 15–20% of the signal. People are coming into our websites. They remain anonymous because they can't read their third-party cookies anymore. Okay, we're just gonna take that and continue spending with Google. That's not a good choice, obviously. But you know, with some of the bigger companies, they're very slow to react because they've got so much invested, so many. It's not only the technology and the money you've put into it, it's the people that you've hired to build processes around things. And so, as you know, giving up is probably a temporary thing. They're gonna have to change. The second one is workarounds, and boy, we know this at Tealium as well, and many of my customers have this as well. They play whack-a-mole with Apple. Well, okay, the cookie can't be read, so I'll use link decoration to put something in the URL that proves that you came from another site. Well, Apple got that as well. If you do that, your first-party cookie lasts 24 hours. So finding workarounds is not a suitable solution. You have to play by the rules. You can't hack your way into user IDs. You can't put up a bland privacy banner that says, we want to track you, yes or no. You've got to be more engaging. And this is where I speak about the value exchange. If there's anything you come out of this meeting today and walk away with, that term, the value exchange, should be the front and center of your strategy. How are you going to interact with your consumers and ask them to voluntarily give you their data. It can't just be a bland statement. There's got to be a reason for it. And we all have good reasons for it. Customer experience, personalization, all of those things are extremely important for your brand to strengthen their interaction and engagement with the consumer. So finding workarounds is not a good idea. Take it seriously, invest in it, hire people for this. It's not your usual situation where you're sitting back and thinking for a few weeks what our pop-up banner should look like. I know a lot of us haven't really sat down and thought about that, but it's extremely important. CCPA is only going to get more and more stringent. And starting in 2022, they're speaking of it moving to the CPRA, and it's going to be very GDPR-ish. It's going to be opt-in instead of opt-out. So don't ignore these privacy regulations. They're only going to get tougher. And that leaves us with starting a first-party data-driven approach. That's the way forward, building that foundational customer data pipeline for your business. And this is a pipeline that immediately activates the minute somebody steps on your site. It's independent, it's agnostic, it's not tied to any marketing tools, it's on its own, and it's just there to collect data. So essentially, you wake up one day, you push a button, the screen comes up, that's your data. Regardless of where the data is going, you have to independently manage it. And that's what we believe in at Telium. That's what a lot of people believe in, whether it's our tools or not. We're starting to see data centers of excellence pop up. And we're starting to think of data being considered as a service. Just like software is a service, infrastructure is a service. We all know these SaaS tools. Data truly can be a service. It can flow from a central hub to consuming business and IT units that need data, and we can meter it, we can track it, we can do chargeback models with it. So data should be an independent pipeline, integrated with everything as a push and a pull hub that instantly synchronizes with everything in the organization. So let's take a look at it. I drew a few pictures for everybody to see the adaptation that I've seen in the last 7 years, starting from phase 1 to phase 2 to phase 3. We'll see how that looks like and what you could expect if you start to adapt a first-party data strategy to deal with these privacy regulations and the loss of cookies. Phase 1, right from the beginning, nothing happens overnight. But in sense of data collection, thinking of a data as a pipeline from beginning to end, constantly activated, constantly feeding technologies, the first thing you have to look at is how you collect data. And so this diagram indicates a very simplified approach to doing so. Think of your consumer, your customer, as having any number of devices. I think the last thing I read from Accenture or from Gartner, one of the two, was that by 2022, everybody's going to have 5 to 7 different devices constantly online, bearing their identity and interacting with your brand. And so that can be a phone, it can be a laptop, it can be a spreadsheet. If you've taken their information down, it can be a file. It can be an IoT device, connected TVs, the rage right now. A lot of the pandemic brought it up, and it's going to stay that way. But anything that has a chip and a wire that you're connected to is going to be something that you want to collect data from as a business, and you want to collect, RFM metrics, recency, frequency, monetization. When was the last time Sally was here? What is she doing now? What is the click stream? All of these things are being collected on different data points. It needs to be unified. And there's 2 ways that you can collect data, and you see it depicted in the diagram here. One is device-based collection, whereby we use JavaScript on the devices because they typically have a browser. So we can send what we call JavaScript tags to transmit data from the left to the right. And so that's been around for a decade and more. And so JavaScript collection, client-based, device-based data collection is the norm. That's going to stay in place. It's not going to be as effective because JavaScript data collection needs third-party cookies in a lot of instances to pick up that information and send it over to all those wonderful logos that you see on the right that we use for marketing or analytics or to send messages to our call center. The new approach is to use both device-based and cloud-based. And you see that in the second arrow at the bottom. So we're no longer relying on cookies in this case to track people from page click to page view to screen swipe. Now we're just streaming everything over to the cloud, in that purple cloud that you see in the middle. And that's where the data gets persisted or in real time funneled over to all the wonderful brands that we see on the right. So in other words, data collection is extremely important and it must be addressed first. If you buy a CDP or you have a data lake and you're feeding it garbage and it's all anonymous data, it won't do you any good. In this approach where you have device-based and cloud-based data collection, we can unify the identity data that we find on these devices, persist them and remember them, and use it to develop cohorts and audiences on social media, in cloud storage and analytics, and the DSPs that run our wonderful real-time bidding on ad tech. All of that is available to us, but we have to collect the data. And so this must be automated. It can't be something that we collect and look at 2 days later, because your consumer is acting in real time and you need to be acting in real time as well. So a device-based and cloud-based hybrid model of data collection is phase one. It's the most important thing to set up first. You'll see in the gray square that I've got 3 bullet points. These are very technical bullet points. And for those of you who are technical out there, we're starting to see a situation where if you've got a first-party cookie, which is great, you're dropping first-party cookies instead of third-party cookies. Keep in mind that if that first-party cookie was created by JavaScript or through link declaration, it's only going to last a day. And so Sally comes on your website, she looks around, puts something in her cart, comes back 3 days later, you're not going to remember that. You won't be able to persist it. That first-party cookie will be gone. The technique that we use today and that I'm recommending to my customers is to move your website for all of your owned and operated properties to an A record approach. This is where we actually substitute the URL domain in the first party cookie with the name of your servers. And so Apple does accept that. So we're very confident that Google will too. If you take the time to lock down these anonymous third-party trackers that you have here and change their name to be owned and operated, you'll be able to overcome the loss of the information. The other technique we're recommending is that first-party cookies be created by your web server. Don't create them with JavaScript. So those of you, again, who are technical and know how to do this, if you create a cookie on the server side and drop it in somebody's browser, that's a legitimate cookie that Apple will accept, and we're confident that Google will too, and they can last much longer than 24 hours or even 7 days. So those are technical techniques that we see are strategies that everyone is starting to adopt. Let's talk about phase two. This is where we've got data collection set up, and that's great. We're collecting data in an automated fashion. We're using the dual techniques of client and server side collection. Well, it's time to introduce a way to remember this data. What you saw on the last slide was us simply funneling information to Facebook, to analytics tools, to DSPs, and that's great. Ted Sfikas is on your site. He's clicking around. He did this, he did that. You can have some fundamental marketing strategies with information like that. But once I leave, it's gone. You haven't remembered it. I come back, I'm a brand new person. That's not, so you've got fundamental stuff, but wouldn't it be nice to remember? Wouldn't it be nice to say, hey, Sally's back. She's on the website. She was here 3 days ago. She looked at this product before, so we're going to show her this one now. And so those become more advanced marketing strategies. And in order to remember people when they come back to your website and engage with them intelligently and strengthen your brand, you need a customer data platform. And that's why we've put that in the middle. A customer data platform, or a CDP, is basically a database in the cloud that not only remembers information, it remembers every click stream, it unifies it together, and has pre-configured rules to make decisions in real time. So historical affinity, intent, you can actually measure that. You can tell by what people are doing on your website and what they've done before, what they're likely to do. So we can not only gauge product affiliation, intent metrics, we can actually become predictive, especially if you've got machine learning techniques inside your CDP that can give you likelihood and propensity models. This is where we bring in the RFM metrics. When was the last time they were here? That's out of the box with CDPs. How often do they come? What are they looking at for monetization? How much should we spend? If they look at a Rolex, we're going to bid heavy on those eyeballs when they go to a DSP. If they're looking at something and there's no affinity or intent, we might want to hold off on our marketing. So now we can be a little bit more precise. Point scoring models, everybody wants to do these things. Based on what you look at, your ranking goes up and you can make a decision in an automated fashion when to move data to different advertising silos. So all of this is happening in real time with the customer data platform. As a bonus, every CDP has an identity database inside of it. Some of them have an identity graph, but regardless, the whole purpose here is going cross-device, cross-session, and cross-domain. In other words, if you come onto the owned and operated property of your business, regardless if I use a phone or a laptop, you know it's me because I'm giving you my identity, I'm logging in, and I'm able to stitch these different devices from, anywhere from 5 to 7 different devices, and I know it's you. And so I can treat you the same way despite what device you are on. Identity data and identity management is the core of any CDP. So use the CDP not only for privacy compliance, use it to automate your analytics and orchestrate your data to the multi-channel on the right. And when we speak of multi-channel, we're talking about every single ad tech, MarTech, analytics, call centers, you name it. It's the same profile moving to all of these different destinations. Okay, so now we're going into phase 3. We've automated data collection. We've automated the capability to form a customer profile in the center. And we've also automated and orchestrated the ability to transmit it at the right time to the right technologies to do the right thing. But with modern marketing strategies, we can't stop there. If you're not doing what you see in the middle right now, your competitors are. Experimentation is all the rage right now. Personalization is the #1 marketing strategy and has been for the last couple of years and will continue to be. A/B testing and personalization as a means of experimentation is something that all of the best brands are doing to make sure that they're treating you accordingly with who you are and what your customers want to do. Journey orchestration is becoming more and more important, especially when you think about the predictive nature of journeys, what we think you're going to do. So there's a lot of tools out there that can do this for you, but you need the data. You need an accurate profile to feed the journey orchestration. The #1 reason that these journey orchestration tools fail is they're being given data that is meaningless. They always make the same prediction. When you give a journey orchestration tool enriched data that is accurate in real time from devices that's happening in the moment, you've now put that thing on steroids. Incrementality and attribution is a big thing. This is about reporting. How should we add consumers to different cohorts at the right time based on their behavior? Why are we doing that? How do we measure our success? Those are things that we absolutely need to run our budgets. With the loss of the third-party cookie, we lost about 15% of the signal right away. We're losing more and more of it every day. When chief marketing officers go to the CEO and ask for budget for marketing, and the CEO says, "Great, show me what you did last year," and you've got a signal loss of 15 to 30%, your marketing budget's probably going to go down. Facebook and Telium together, we actually go to market saying this message because we're seeing those budgets go down. Incrementality and attribution are extremely important. You have to prove your results, and first-party data is the only way to do it moving forward. See, customer experience insights, live chat, lookalike and RTB optimization we've talked about, and machine learning, all of it combined. These are all the modern strategies of a CDP. What's different about this screen from last screen is you notice there's a blue arrow moving from the CDP back down to the customer devices. And so this is an advanced technique of CDPs. The profile that you're building in the cloud that shows the accurate first-party profile is not stagnant, is not just waiting. It's actually being sent back down to the device in real time, where we can use even more advanced marketing strategies that involve live chat, CX insights, personalization, A/B and multivariate testing. So I've put some logos in on the left-hand side about some of the popular technologies that we see out in the market that can use that kind of first-party data. That's really the future, is when that customer data platform is not just keeping track of profiles and updating them, but is actually using them in real time and sending them back down in the device. When they do that, when CDPs can do this, you don't have to think, you don't have to get very sophisticated with some of these technologies that have to operate on the device. You can just bring up the data on the device using JavaScript and start engaging with them in a personalized fashion. We haven't forgotten about the multi-channel on the right either. That's all still happening. Machine learning techniques, advanced cohorts, and good segmentation as a result of these first-party profiles, they enrich and expand our ability to interact and advertise. After that, we come to the final stage, and this is, I know this is a really colorful slide. This is the strategy that everybody wants to get to. I've heard customer 360, single view of the customer, unified view. It's all the same thing. It's when you know who's who in the zoo, how they're interacting with you, and not just, you noticed on the left-hand side, we've changed it up a little bit. It's not just devices anymore. Your customers and your consumers exist in different states, in different funnel states on every system in your organization. So it's not just consumer devices by this stage, the final vision that you want. It's now unifying the systems, all systems that contain customer data. That can include cloud storage providers like Snowflake or Google BigQuery or AWS. It could be the preferences of customers that live in CMPs like OneTrust. It could be somebody picking up a phone and wanting a refund or giving you a compliment of business. That lives in a CRM, that lives in a help desk. So consumer devices, it's not only about capturing that data in real time as they're engaging with your business, it's also unifying it in an omni-channel fashion. And the omni-channel lives on the left. It lives in all the places that consumer data lives, both in real time and offline. And so having technology that is collecting data in a unified fashion on all of these systems in real time, in batch, as they occur, that's really the vision of data collection. That's how we unify that customer. And again, the core is identity. Every one of those systems, hopefully, has the email address of the consumer. That's the most popular identity data that we've seen in the industry today. Everything gets funneled to the middle in that CDP. You now not only have an individual, like you see in the left-hand side of the CDP, and you're keeping track of their profile in the center and all of their RFM metrics, all of their attributes, all of their psychographic behavioral data points. You're now automatically segmenting them. And so you've got on the right-hand side of the CDP square, the ability where if you're an international brand, you can actually segment the profile to be in different regions of the world. They're going to behave differently. You can treat them differently. So you can get very sophisticated in your CDP if it's a good CDP, and it will do this. And the foundation, the analytics that you see on the bottom, the CDP is constantly extracting this data and syncing up with data warehouses, data lakes, cloud storage, et cetera, et cetera. And so not only the individual profile, but also the audience segmentation, all of it is unified. You've now established a common nomenclature for the entire business. Page view is page view, button click is button click, zip code is zip code. It doesn't change regardless of where they are in the world. We use a single language now with the CDP, and that relieves everything that you see on the right in the multi-channel, all of that instrumentation that used to take place. Every one of our 75 different technologies that we use for analytics, social media, DSPs, etc. They used to have to instrument them one by one, collecting their data in a silo. No longer. They're now receiving data from the center as a service, and they're speaking the same language. You've instantly chopped off probably 30 to 40% of the time, cost, and risk associated with collecting data. And so you've not only become more efficient and more customer-centric, you've saved a lot of money in doing so, and you've opened up brand new revenue streams because you know who the consumer is, and you can be predictive in what they're about to do. So this is the vision. This is the way forward. Just to wrap it up, to succeed today, that data is going to be important. Treating data independently in the center and fueling those technologies is what we need to do. And if you do it right, you'll end up forming a pipeline like you can see here, collecting data, standardizing it, making sure it's fit for use, collecting the consent before it goes. Do you want this data? Does it even deserve to be in your business? If yes, move to the center, develop the single customer view, go south and synchronize your data warehouses, your lakes, your machine learning platforms, make sure they're up to speed, then move it to the right and start integrating with all of the multi-channel destinations that you want to see data go to. That's the 5-phase process. That's how it works from left to right. Don't forget, it also works from right to left. In the middle, we're not only automating and collecting the data, we're also pushing it back to the devices to surface that profile up in real time so that we can personalize to consumers as they're engaging on your touch points. So some key takeaways before we call it a day. Identity resolution techniques, they're becoming increasingly more challenging. It's hard to figure out if it's Sally on the iPhone, the same person that was on the laptop. Don't forget, 80% of users nowadays, they're opting out of IDFA tracking. You're going to have to come up with a new technique to identify who that is, or you're going to have to deal with anonymous data sets. And that reduces your marketing effectiveness tremendously if you have to do things that way. Give them a value exchange, encourage them to give you their data, and tell them why you're doing it. Keep in mind, 20% of browser usage blocks third-party cookies by default. I think that number is higher. This is an older slide. But regardless, in 2022, third-party cookies are gone. And so the old techniques that we used to interact with ad tech are going to be completely deprecated. And so we need to move to a first-party cookie and a first-party strategy. Those identity resolution strategies are basically required. You can't be the ostrich that puts the head in the sand. You have to deal with this. But there's the reason for it. Personalization techniques, we're seeing increments of 10 to 15% in lift of revenue if you can get personalization correct. And if, regardless of whether you do it or not, most people expect personalized interactions. Over 70%, they want to be personalized. They want to have the business know them and the brand know them. And so 76% get frustrated when that doesn't happen. And all of us can say that when we go to a website and they don't remember who I am or what I looked at last, and they treat me like I'm coming for the first time, it's not a good experience. Competitors will do it if you don't. So that value exchange that compels customers to provide their data is the key to doing that. And I've said it over and over again, CDPs are the ideal solution to run this because CDPs are connected to devices in real time. They can bring up the privacy preferences and remember it. They can bring up your past and connect it with your present and understand where to move your customer profile to. So those are the key takeaways. I will open it up. I think I did pretty good on time, Julia, if I'm not mistaken. A little bit over. Okay.
Awesome.
Let's open up to Q&A.
Yeah, it does look like we have a few questions that came through. Ted, are you able to see them on your end?
I am.
Okay, awesome.
I see 4 of them right now, and I'll address them one by one. So Praveen, does this mean we get the data even if the customer is not active on our app? To clarify, it's both. So if I pick up my iPhone and I go onto an app or I go to a website using my mobile browser, data collection technology is collecting data if the customer is active. So that is a yes. If they're not active on their app, there's absolutely things that we can do with our CDP to bring in customer data offline, so to speak. And so I may pick up the phone as a customer and call up a call center and make a comment about a product or show intent or show affinity to a product category. That won't be saved in real time, obviously. That'll be saved on a help desk or a CRM. We may collect data from consumers in other fashions, in real events or conferences, that write things down on a spreadsheet. So even if they're not active, all of it has to get moved to the center at some point. And so that was the clarification with how customer data exists in the omni-channel, not only the devices, but the systems that we use to collect data as well. How is CDP remembering returning user as an anonymous user? So a little bit of a technical question. So a user comes on your website using an iPhone. They haven't identified themselves, but we know some unique things about that user, looking at the user agent or looking at the IP address of the device. For example, I like to refer to Facebook in this instance. They've got a wonderful solution for both client and server-side data collection. And Facebook's best practice is collect the user agent, start to fingerprint who that person is, even if you don't know their name. Even if they're just a silhouette and you're looking and you don't know that it's Ted Sfikas, you can tell a lot about them. You can drop a first-party cookie, and that first-party cookie will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It'll be a unique number. If I come back in 24 hours, if it's a client-side cookie, or 15 days, if it's a server-side cookie, that'll still be there. You may not know that it's me, but you know it's that silhouette with that number. So first-party cookies, metadata, device data, all of it is legitimate identity data. So it's don't only think of terrestrial data, think of pseudonymous data too, that anonymously identifies me, but is persistent. So the CDP takes that data, saves it in its database, and waits. And other devices log on. You know, if you come on and you have 2 anonymous data sets, yes, I will exist as 2 people in the CDP until such time as I have a unifying identity between the 2. So maybe on my iPhone, 3 days later, I say, you know what, I'm going to sign up for the newsletter on your website, tedsfikas@gmail.com, done. Now this device has terrestrial data, it has demographic data about me. Anytime in the future when this other device, on my iPhone, an app, whatever it is, anytime tedsfikas@gmail.com surfaces here, we'll stitch the profiles together and merge them. And so the CDP will remember and also persist that identity. It's core to a CDP functionality. If your CDP isn't doing identity resolution, it's just a data lake. There's no difference. Okay, anonymous attendee. Beyond email address, is there any way for identity management? Most of the website will have 95% traffic. Absolutely correct. Most traffic is anonymous. In fact, 95% is conservative. It's probably more than that. Email address to me, in my personal experience, is the #1 piece of identity data that we're asking for. We're asking for people to give us that because why? An email is typically persistent for a number of years. You can count on it. People don't usually change them. Maybe they have a couple of them, but for all purposes and intents, the email is the #1 piece of identity data. And as I just explained in my previous answer, if you can get that email, you can use it as a stitching agent from device to device to device and unify those different devices together. So there's other ways to do it. We can drop tokens from other advertising companies and use that to do it. New identity management techniques are always being innovated right now. At my company, Telium, we're keeping an eye on the market because we think some of these new identity techniques are amazing. But the answer, can we find out who you are? No, you can't unless I give you that data voluntarily. That will never go away. We're not going back. So any company that says I can find out that it's Ted Sfikas on your website, even if he doesn't know, likely to get sued. That's not going to be a valid solution in the future. You have to ask and you have to use the value exchange. Elaborate more on the hybrid approach. We can probably go offline for it, and you can always contact me at the SDEC, but basically the hybrid approach is we're using JavaScript on devices and then we're streaming data to the cloud, and both of them are the same thing. It's the same data, whether you're collecting it on my device and transmitting it using a JavaScript tag to Google Analytics, or whether you're first of all giving it to the CDP and having the CDP transmit it to Google Analytics from the cloud side. No difference, just a different technique. Instead of JavaScript, we're using APIs on the cloud, but it's the same data going to the same technology. Does this mean the death of personalized ads on third-party platforms like social media? No, not really. You can still, we're still going to see a lot of, ads that are meant for like the broad marketing strategy. So people are always going to be spending money on show this ad. There's a big event coming up for my company. I have a new product. Of course, you're going to go out and your purpose is acquisition marketing in that case. You're trying to get lift. So you're trying to hit as many eyeballs as you can. You don't necessarily need to know who's who in the zoo. You know that if you push out these ads on Facebook and blast the economy with this, you're probably going to get more people come to your site. That'll always be relevant. But with personalized marketing, what we're seeing now is you're not going to be able to buy data from your consumers from other websites that have collected. That data is private now. So you have to think of yourself as a company that's in the business of collecting data, in the business of forming a first-party profile. And when you do, you're naturally going to want to personalize and use your data. So it's not the death of it, but it's certainly an increased emphasis. What's your view on devices which are not built for GDPR compliant tracking? Example, TVs without consent. I think they're going the way of the dodo. I mean, I'm on Netflix right now. I've got Disney Plus, I've got HBO, I've got way too many. And all of them let me know that they're tracking my data. And I know they are, because when I watch, the latest Marvel movie, Hawkeye, I start getting ads for WandaVision on Facebook. And I know they know what I'm doing. It's actually really good. I see which companies are really good at marketing based on what I do. If I go on my browser and I look at homedepot.com and I start looking for lawnmowers, it's on Facebook about 10 minutes later, and it's showing me Home Depot ads. And it's like, we know you didn't buy something. Home Depot's got a great marketing technique there. So I don't think any devices aren't going to be built for GDPR or CCPA. I think it's mandatory as it is. What the caveat that I'll put on that is, in the last 7 years, I've talked to more lawyers than I've ever thought I wanted to. And every one of them has a different opinion. And they are the ones who make the rules, not us, not the marketers. Your legal team will tell you what's appropriate and how to collect data, and they're going to be the ones that guide you. So for the first time ever, we're seeing marketing and privacy in legal blend together. You can't do one without the other. And the lawyers are running this one. So I don't think we'll see devices that are not built for privacy compliance. And Praveen says, from my understanding, a device fingerprint can change too. Absolutely correct. It's not a reliable means of identification. It's not the most reliable, but it's the best we can do in the anonymous state. So again, user agent, IP address, browser version, et cetera, they're not reliable in the long term, but they can be helpful in actually establishing cohorts in real time to understand who's who and identifying them. And we've already seen some innovation from Google. They call it the Google Flock project, where they're actually using machine learning and looking at what we're doing and placing us into cohorts immediately. The only identity they have is, anonymous metadata, but that's okay. It's okay to advertise to a silhouette based on their behavior. You still have some information, but no, it's not ideal. We do want demographic data, first name, last name, telephone number, email, of course. And that's where it comes to the value exchange. Does Telium or other CDPs deliver a single unified omni-channel batch of data for analytics to a BI tool, or is it still useful to combine multiple sources? Yes and yes. So speaking for my company, we have 2 S3 buckets and 2 Redshift databases. So we track every single button click, every single click stream, every single session in one of those buckets. And then the other bucket, we track the evolution of the customer profile. So the 15 sessions that I had with your website are all stored in one bucket. My evolving profile, my customer profile that shows me having intent of buying the Rolex over time is in another. And we keep those separated and we offer them to BI tools. We also have technology that we can run on these buckets and Redshift databases to surface some really common dashboard metrics like intent, frequency, recency, etc. But for the most part, most of my customers, speaking for Telium customers, they want to use their tools that they have today. They want to use Tableau, Looker, Domo, and they want access to the data. They don't want anything fancy from the CDP other than being the trusted source of every session and every profile. As a bonus, we also keep audience segmentation. If you choose to use Telium for your centralized audience segmentation, which I strongly recommend, we'll keep track of those cohorts for you as well. And by looking at Telium, the CDP, you'll know that those segments exist on every other technology as well. So yes, we're very much interested in fueling any BI tool in the industry. How do CDPs enable personalized targeting on third-party platforms unless the user uses the same PII across platform? They don't. Yeah, that's the right question. If I don't identify myself on this phone and then I go on my browser and I don't identify myself, you've got 2 TEDs and you're going to treat me differently. because I'll do different things on different devices. There's no way around that. Now, how do we get personal? Well, we can only use the siloed interaction on each devices to personalize. I may show different intent on my laptop than I do on my phone. That's all you can do. But the minute that I identify myself with a unifying stitching agent, like an email address on both of these devices, we merge the two profiles together, and we call that visitor stitching at Telium, but it's really just a fancy word for identity resolution. So you're not going to be accurate with personalization unless you can get that unifying identity data. You really need that. And most of my customers are using email. I say this new word, GDPR injustice. Imagine there are 10 apps, and which 3 apps have all your data until the pinned location of your house, and the remaining 7 apps getting access by same device have to follow the GDPR compliance. However, other are tracking on coordinate level due to services they provide. I say, if your data is exposed to one company, then why to block for others? Really, I get the sentiment of this question is, I could access a website on my iPhone and be, totally fine, click OK on everything. But then other data, I'm like, no, I don't want you to know about my laptop. It's debatable whether we should have a unified way to collect identity privacy preferences and opt-in versus opt-out. There must be a better way, because we're getting what we call banner fatigue. Especially in Europe, every website you go to in Europe is banner, banner, banner. Yes, yes, yes. It doesn't remember. It asks you every time because your cookie's dying. This can't persist. The customer experience is getting ruined because of that, and that's nobody's fault. That's the law. So as we speak right now, they're starting to think of different ways to get a unified consent and just apply it from a browser perspective. Instead of having these pop-ups appear, wouldn't it be easier if I could go to Google Chrome and say, look, I'm okay with sharing data with e-commerce, with banks, with entertainment sites, but healthcare, no, I don't want them getting my data at all, never. Anytime I use health, I care about my health data, it's really private to me, click. That's the future. That's when the browser can control in an automated fashion who gets my data and when. In my humble opinion, society is changing and it's starting to really understand the value of our data. Like, if you've got parents who have, who are older and don't even like going on the internet, you'll hear it from them too. They're like, I can't believe some of the stuff that you give away on the internet. This is crazy. They're right. It's been the Wild West for a while. So I think it's changing. I think society is going to be looking at first-party data a lot more closely. And I think you're right. I think there has to be a much more streamlined way to make it more convenient for us and more logical for us to give our data away. And stay tuned. I think it's going to change. If a brand marketer and retailer are partners developing independent first-party data strategies, is there any value to adopting a second-party data strategy using a data clean room to leverage aggregated data as well? We are starting to see the rise of the clean room concept, where a lot of businesses are going offline from their business with a VPN connection into a private virtual world where they get data being given to them that they can't take home with them. Basically, that's what a clean room is. You're able to analyze the data that comes from social media, for example, take a look at cohorts, make your notes, understand things. It's all anonymous. You still learn from it, but you're not allowed to take that data and use it in and of itself, only in the clean room. We're seeing that happen more and more. We're keeping an eye on it. Most of our big Fortune 50 companies are using clean rooms as we speak, and they use it for analytics purposes. And that's a second-party data approach where we share data with each other. So, a great example is the automotive industry. People who buy cars, it's an oligopoly. You've got like 5 or 6 different major automotive companies, and they share data. They use, they cooperate with the trends of the industry. So I see that rising. I don't see it being as useful for e-commerce or where you've got, micro transactions taking place, because, the fidelity of that data for the product is just too low. But for big purchases and companies that are dealing with a consumer that is static, like a bank, it's not often we switch banks, right? That's an opportunity for a second party data co-op, so to speak. So I do see that being relevant for certain verticals, but not for all of them. Has second party also died like third party? Because no one is talking about it. I mean, it hasn't died, but the reason that nobody's talking about it, it depends on your perspective and where you are. Like when I'm talking with, you know, e-commerce companies, they're not as likely to bring up this topic as travel and hospitality vertical, or as the automotive vertical, or as the finance vertical. So it depends on where you are in the industry, where second party data is going to become important and how to share data with each other. And that's where I think clean rooms will surface. But net, to wrap this all up, first party data is important to every vertical, every company, and you're not going to have a choice. We're clanging the bell, and we have been for many years now. We have to get off our addiction to third party cookies. It has to stop. We have to start investing. Yes, you're going to have to spend money and buy a few more things. But in exchange, you get a CDP and you get an automated governance for all of your ad tech and all of your MarTech with this, as well as complying with privacy. It's no longer a nice to have. The CDPs are a must have now. Whether you call it a CDP or not, you have to centralize customer data and treat it differently than any other data. And it has to start immediately before 2022. If you don't do it now, Google will force you to do it later.
Well, that's awesome, Ted. Thank you for blasting out those questions.
You're welcome.
I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your expertise on this topic. I think you've really helped get all of our gears spinning for 2022. So yeah, just wanted to say thank you again for presenting today. It's been very, very helpful.
Very welcome. And I look forward to seeing you guys again and interacting with the community. It's my pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much. All right, everybody, have a safe and happy new year.
Bye now.